Generally, I would not recommend such nonsense. I could have my period tomorrow if I want. None of you needed to know that. Slipknot, also not a sponsor. I am trying to wean myself off of caffeine. If you're worried about you're about to get eaten, no phrasing, here, try this lollipop. It's better than cocaine. You know what's better than coffee and cocaine? More coffee and cocaine. Either the show's going to be much better or much worse. Sweetie, you are white breads. I'm not asking you to live without pizza. Blah, blah, blah. French. I feel like I'm talking way too fast. When was the last time, besides just now, that you heard the phrase supply chain? I don't want to hand these fucks another excuse to start charging me more money. If there needs to be shrinkflation, goddammit, it should be on this show. Scratch everything I just said.
Hard Rock Lunchbox.
Greetings and salutations, everybody in the Hard Rock Lunchbox universe. And of course, if you're watching me on YouTube, you are watching the top 20. How's everybody doing? It is a somewhat inglorious May 9th, 2024 year of our Lord. That's right, Louis C.K., I said that. Looks like we here in the Northeast are finally getting to what we like to call spring. There is some humidity in the air. It is kind of unpredictable weather, but it's finally above 60 degrees for a change. That's nice. You can't see, but I'm in shorts today, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. I would get up and show you, but actually as I turned on the camera today, I happened to have my stomach sticking out, and I was like, oh, look, there's a picture of a pregnant woman on my computer, but it wasn't a pregnant woman. I have been failing completely and miserably just trying to keep the weight off. It's just been an incredibly stressful period for me. Not that I get my period anymore. I'm too old. That's not true. I could have my period tomorrow if I want. Something. Yeah, just super stressful. Just can't seem to get out of my own way, kids. Which is probably not that uncommon of a problem for anybody out there playing at home. I just remember I just saw these. This is not a sponsor, the D-Buds, but I remember. So these are the earbuds I wear, or the earplugs, ear protection I wear on stage. I wear them at practice now too. It's actually really funny. Like I am somebody that never wore ear protection like my entire life, and I've never particularly had good hearing, so it tended to work out. But I was reading, I was like, I don't know, I was kind of getting to that point where I was like, I should probably be a little concerned about this. So I just started trying, like I have a whole bunch, like I have the eargasms and stuff. Actually, I have the minuets. I remember talking about these. I love these minuets. But what was happening with that, these are my favorite, right? These are my favorite by a lot. But what was happening with the minuets is that the glue that was holding them together, my ear sweat, I guess, or actually it's probably more my head sweat that gets trapped in my ear canal, was acidic enough that it was actually disintegrating the glue. I actually talked to the owner of the company about it, and they just kept sending me new ones, and he was like, that's basically all we can really do. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really help me, because they would fall apart like at a show. Like they did it twice. They fell apart during a show, and it's like, that's not good. So I just kind of went with something with a little bit less moving components. The eargasms are good because they're like solid one piece, but they didn't fit in my ear well, so I went with the D-Buds from D'Addario, which I love, which is great because I'm a D'Addario artist anyway, so I like supporting that company. They're a local company. They're right here in Farmingdale. Like I've actually just passed by them the other day. Like that's how local they are. So it's like it's a local company. They're a good company. I've been a D'Addario artist for years, maybe like coming up on a couple of decades now. So they've always been really good to me, and I like the company. And this is a really, like if you're looking for ear protection, like as a guitar player or bass player, maybe even a drummer, the D-Buds I find really, really good. They have two modes, which makes it a little less mechanical than the minuets, because the minuets they were full. You could dial in how much you wanted. These are just, two different attenuations. But the reason I'm saying that is I just remembered, like, I need to order another pair of those. The ones so what happens is they're on a string, right? So, like, you don't lose them, like if you're old and you're wearing glasses like that. So I just had them, but I always wear them on stage, and at the last show, I forgot to take them off like right away. And so what happens, they got kind of stuck in my hair, and I ended up pulling them out while I was out at the parking lot outside Mr. Beery's. And as I pulled them, like tried to tug them through my hair, I realized that I had pulled the actual bud off of, you know, it. So all I really had was like the back end and not the part that actually does the protection. So I went out after the show with my phone, my flashlight, and I actually found it in the parking lot. Like, it had been run over though, but it still worked, and that is like why I'm just saying they're so good. But it had been run over, so I feel like its days are numbered, so I have to order another one. It wouldn't be such a big deal, except at this point, like when you rehearse with earbuds in your ears, you just become very used to it, so that you can't really... It's like a big shock to play without them or to play with different ones. So none of you needed to know that. Daddario is not a sponsor of this show, although they are a sponsor of the artist formerly known as DJ Perlman from Rebel 9, actually all the way back to Narcotic Gypsy days. So they've been a DJ Perlman sponsor for a very long time. So thank you, Daddario, for your service. And I will be ordering new things. I actually have to order new guitar strings because I'm changing the gauge that I'm playing, which is just so hella annoying. Which means nothing to most people, but it's the thickness of the strings. I'm changing the thickness that I'm using because my new Jericho guitar is like super sensitive about that kind of stuff, and it keeps killing all the strings on the bridge. So I'm trying to find the right one. If you're interested, what I'm currently playing with, I'm using the same gauge that Slipknot uses. It just happens to be that way, and Slipknot also not a sponsor of the Hard Rock Lunchbox, and that's fine. I will tell you this. I feel like this is news, and this is like an official warning, a show note from the Hard Rock Lunchbox. So let me give you one of these. Yeah, so official show note of the top 20 in the Hard Rock Lunchbox. I am trying to wean myself off of caffeine. Generally, I would not recommend such nonsense, but I have been sleeping so poorly and so badly, even when completely exhausted for the past few months, that it warrants a new experiment of change to give it a shot. And it's always so funny because, like, you know, in this day and age, like, what's the first thing you do when you're like, okay, I want to figure out the best way to do that, right? Like, you go to Google. I don't even know that people go to Google so much anymore. I think the starting search now is probably YouTube, because the Google returns, the first thing it returns is a bunch of YouTube videos. So even if you're not doing it on purpose, you're doing it pretty much, incidentally. But excuse me, it's just so funny. It's just so funny because so I think I typed in like best way to quit caffeine or wean off caffeine or whatever, and the videos that show up, like, they're, because it's going to be filtered by the people I watch. So there's a lot from Andrew Huberman, who I always really like. He's if you don't know who he is, he's like a neurobiologist from like California, and he's like a big dude, but like he knows a lot of stuff, and he studies the stuff, so he speaks with some authoritative answers, and he's always good at kind of giving you the answer that makes sense in the gut. And we talk about that a lot on the show. Like, this is exactly like, this is oh, that makes sense to me. Like, you know, a lot of people with the fake news stuff, and they're like, nah, you know, you're not smart enough to know those kinds of things. So I am. So just, you're gonna have to trust me on this. But so he speaks a lot about why, you know, certain things happen with caffeine. But he basically just started saying, he's like, you know, caffeine, like all other ENs, are poisons, right? It's a poison. Like, your body has an autonomic response to it because it's a poison to your body, right? Like, so the misunderstanding, and completely justified misunderstanding, is that, you know, caffeine gives you energy. That's not what it does, right? Caffeine is, like I said, it's a toxin. It's a poison. Well, maybe it's not a toxin because it's not an animal. But it's, well, actually, that doesn't make sense. Scratch everything I just said, but not everything, but like the animal and the toxin. There's a different definition with toxin than poison, and I'm just too tired, which obviously is what's going on here. I'm just too tired to remember what that difference is, so I'm going to just stop speaking on that. But what happens is, when you have caffeine, it triggers your body to do something. It basically, and it does a lot of triggering with your adrenals, which are, you know, little pimple-sized things that live on your kidneys and stuff like that, and it triggers just that sort of almost, it's stress response, right? Like what caffeine does is it causes stress, because that stress response is what we your fight or flight mode from back when you were like, apes, if you believe in that nonsense. I'm kidding. It's not nonsense. It's actually true. It creates your fight or flight response, which is your stress response, which is one of the biggest problems that we're having in our world today, is because we're having stress responses, but we're like safely tucked away, like in our offices or in our jobs or whatever. Like we're not on the savannah of Africa about to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. I mean, some of us have it worse, but some of us, don't necessarily have it. So anyway, caffeine triggers your stress response. Your stress response is what makes you alert, right? If you're worried about you're about to get eaten, no phrasing, that you are constantly like on alert for what's going to happen next. And that's what that does. But it's basically, it's a poison. So it tricks your body it forces your body to respond to it. So, but he talks about like adenosine and stuff like that, which is why, when you have, adenosine is the thing that makes you sleepy. And you have adenosine floating through your body in the morning, but caffeine competes with that. So caffeine binds to the receptors that takes on the adenosine. So if you have coffee like first thing in the morning, the adenosine is still just floating around in your body. And then by the time when the caffeine finally releases out of your system and comes off of those things that it's been bound to, then the adenosine will go bind to those receptors, and you'll be, start to get really tired. And that's that between 1 and 3 in the afternoon crash. Right, so I don't generally have that particular problem. What I'm really suffering from is my inability to sleep. So anyway, I'm going through this weaning process. So I'm using a French press. Like I'm a big espresso drinker. I love espresso. It's my favorite kind of coffee. It's really, I don't even like coffee. Like cold brew, I will tolerate, especially if it's the nitro variety or the Wandering Bear variety, because I just like those specifically. But generally, I'm an espresso drinker. So now I'm back to coffee. It's French press coffee, and I'm using like a dark roast. And basically, what I'm doing is I'm taking 7 scoops of the dark roast. 7 scoops of coffee for the 20-something ounces of water I'm adding to it. Right. And what I'm going to do is every day or every other day, I'm going to reduce 1 scoop of the actual coffee, and I'm adding in, I don't remember, it's not herbal, well, it's probably herbal, but it's like this hickory, chicory, dock, kind of whatever nonsense. And it's like, it tastes just as good as coffee. Like, no, it doesn't. Like, anytime you see any of those things like mud water or mushroom elixir, like, it's just as good as coffee. No, it isn't. Because if it was, then everybody would be doing it and there wouldn't be a problem. I like the ones, like mud water specifically is probably what I'll end up on, because it's cacao and mushrooms and, like, a bunch of other things. And it, like, really, there's a lot to it in terms of, like, helping you. Like, those are things that will actually give you energy. Like, cacao is, like, famously, something that gives you energy. Like, you have a bite of chocolate, like, it's just like, ooh, hey, what's up, everybody? So it's not doing the same thing as caffeine. So I can see myself getting there. But even all over their site, like, we'll give you a frother, and it's like, it's better than coffee. It's like, is it? It's like, hey, man, here, try this lollipop. It's better than cocaine. It's like, you know what?
It's always enough.
Yeah, exactly. You know what's better than coffee and cocaine? More coffee and cocaine. I mean, that's generally speaking my rule, how I've lived my life. I used to smoke, and I got to tell you, like, nicotine, one of the greatest things ever invented. Terrible for you. Like, and probably one of the greatest things I've ever done is quit smoking. Like, the number one thing you can do for your health, besides not die, is not smoke. And it just, like, I tell my drummer all the time, like, man, you really need to quit. Like, it's so bad for you. Like, it's so bad for you and it's just, anyway, point is, like, so I'm going to start reducing. So I'm already, started reducing. So I have 1 scoop of the fake coffee, 6 scoops of the regular coffee, and I'm going to go on that. It's probably going to be like a 12-day thing. So by next week, either the show's going to be much better or much worse. I don't know which one it's going to be, because, like, I won't be as energetic, I'm sure, but, like, I might be well slept. Because what's happening now is I'm reserving the hours that I need to sleep. And, I will get up generally once a night, but not always. So even on the nights where I sleep through, Like last night, I actually slept through. I don't remember waking up, and I was asleep fairly early. And I clocked enough hours. Like, I clocked enough hours that a normal adult would be like, oh my God, I feel great. I don't. I am restless. I am turning sorry. Last night was not the night I slept through the night. I think it was the night before. Honestly, I don't remember. That's how bad it's getting. All I want to do is I want a solid, restful 8 hours of sleep. And I want to do that for a week, and I want to see how much better I feel. If I go through this whole process, and now I'm on this fake hickory chicory coffee, or even this mushroom stuff, the mushroom elixir or the mud water or whatever, and I'm not any better, like, I'm just going to go right back to coffee. Like, just down. I know, my health advice, not that anybody ever asks, whenever people are feeling some sort of dysbiosis or some other way about them, where they're having like some real kind of problems, like, focusing or acne or arthritis or some sort of autoimmune sort of thing. And I know not everybody knows what's autoimmune and what's not, but like, there are some things that are like classically autoimmune, and we've just been lied to our entire lives. But whenever people are having those kinds of problems, I usually just tell them, a lot of times there's like food allergies, or there's some particular problem with food, and depending on what their lifestyle is and what their complaints are, like, I'll just say, like, this is what I always suggest, and I used to suggest this all the time, is if you can give up wheat, like gluten, and dairy for 30 days. If you can do that for 30 days, and if you can't, like 15 days is fine, 2 weeks is 14 days is fine. But if you can do it for a significant period of time, your body will start to change and start to recover. And you'll be able to tell if the change you are making is having a positive effect. You always have to get over the first couple of days. I will say, whenever I'm like 95 to 99% gluten-free at this point in my life. I have to be, because I have my autoimmune condition is rheumatoid arthritis. So I will actually get so painful in my joints, my hands specifically, that I have a little trouble functioning, and it's always gluten. Always, always, always. I could not tell you the last time I had a bagel. Like, I just don't have them anymore. I will have a slice of pizza from time to time, but it's going to be the best goddamn slice of pizza I can find to make it worth it. I also, if I'm going to have a slice of pizza, like, I really cannot have anything for the next several days, so it can kind of clear out and stuff like that. But I tell people, you do these things and then see how you're feeling after that 14 days or that 30 days. And if you've noticed some changes, then I'm all about information, right? Like, we're all adult, or most of us are adults. Like, you can do what you want with that kind of information. I think that's really important, especially if you learn it. Like you're learning it, as opposed to being told it. Like, me telling you, like, hey man, stop eating gluten and your acne will clear up, like, is meaningless. If you stop eating gluten for 30 days and your acne goes away, you've learned something. Now, you can decide if you want to do anything with that or not. Like, that's completely up to you. Like, you might be like, I need my PB&J, like, on, white bread. Like, my daughter does that shit all the time. She's like, do we have any white bread? I'm like, sweetie, you are white bread. So, like, I don't see what the problem is. But, once you do that and you go through that and you learn, like, oh, like, okay, this is affecting me this way, then you have a decision to make and you can change your life accordingly. And I remember giving Jimmy that advice one time years ago. I don't even remember what the ailment was, but I was like, try doing this. And he's like, I can't live without pizza. I'm like, I'm not asking you to live without pizza. I'm just saying, like, this is, just try it so you know it. And he did, I think he did like 20 days or something where he was like gluten-free, and he was like, yeah, I didn't feel any different. I'm like, well, good news, man. Then you don't have a problem with gluten. Go get yourself a pizza. Like, that's great news. So my point is that if I'm going to go through this, and like, it should be like 12 days I'm off, but it'll end up being like 14 days for this whole little experiment. And in 14 days, if I don't feel any better and I'm not sleeping any better, guess who's going to Starbucks? Or Gregory's. Probably not Starbucks. I'm so fucking mad at Starbucks right now. Can I just tell you, like, this whole shrinkflation thing is just so goddamn annoying, and I hate having to use words like that, but like, it's really perfect. Like, I was just telling Jimmy the other day, like, the only food I've ever eaten at Starbucks with any sort of regularity whatsoever, besides, well, I would get cake pops, but not for me. I'd get those for Charlotte. Is the egg bites. They're like sous vide, I don't know, something French, blah blah blah, French, to quote Hannibal Buress. But so I really liked it. They're the egg bites, and I would get like the bacon and Gruyere, like, it just, mwah. They're so good, like I would get them from Costco and stuff like that. And by the way, the Costco one just as good. I mean, they are Starbucks brand, so it's not surprising, but they're just as good, way cheaper. So I would get those, and I don't get Starbucks a lot. I really have been economizing for the past couple of years, so I'm trying to not spend a lot of money on outside stuff. So I have my own coffee maker. I don't cook. But I was walking up by my chiropractor, and if I take a different way home, like I actually walk right by Starbucks, and it was one morning I was absolutely starving, so I feel like I'm talking way too fast. Anybody else noticing that? But so anyway, so I went there and I pre-ordered, probably like a quad espresso and the egg bites. And I got there and I pulled the egg bites out. Now, for my entire adult life that I've been eating the egg bites, there have been 3 egg bites in there. Now there are 2. Same price, but they put 2 in there, and it's just like, son of a bitch, man. Like just ripping me off, and it's like the same deal. It all started with that 2-liter bottle of soda. Like my entire childhood was defined by 2-liter bottles of soda. Good luck trying to find a 2-liter bottle of soda. It's usually like 1.75 liters or all that nonsense. And this is all that shrinkflation, which is just the fact that they're still tying it to anything inflation is just so goddamn annoying. And I was saying this just yesterday, because the problem has absolutely nothing to do with any of these things. Like people, the corporate America and the dummies that believe what they're lying about are basically just blaming the fact that we've raised minimum wages for workers, right? The cost of living has soared, by the way, to unbelievable levels. So we had to raise minimum wage because that's really what you have to do. And you can have your argument about whether or not we should have a minimum wage and capitalism and free market and stuff like that. Like, these are societal arguments, and depending on what kind of person you want to be and what kind of society you want to be in, you will have a different opinion, right? Like, I believe in fair market wages. I believe in minimum wages. I believe in unions. I believe in labor safeties. I believe in all that stuff. I also believe in corporate control and corporate responsibility, which has seemed to just gone out the window. Because what has happened is everybody has used the excuse of raising minimum wage by like $1.50 or $2 or whatever, depending on what state you're in. And now all of a sudden everything costs too much money. Like, what they did, all these corporations, they just raised their prices, the cost of those things, and they have not changed their percentages. So they've raised their prices to cover the cost of labor instead of cutting into record corporate profits. By the way, stock market just about to be setting records again. So corporate America is doing just fine. So they raised their prices to cover the cost of these $2 an hour or whatever increase in labor, but they have not changed their percentage that they make off of that labor, right? So they, instead of raising $2, they raised $2.25 an hour or whatever. And then they're just raising profits anyway, because everybody is expecting to pay more money, because all we hear about is inflation, shrinkflation, rate hikes, and all that other stuff. So we as consumers don't even question it. My cable bill or my internet bill for both my business and my personal use just went up. One of them went up $6, one of them went up $9, and I looked at it. I didn't even bother. I just knew it was a different amount because I saw it on my credit card statement. I'm like, I know exactly what they're doing. So we're at the point now where we're just expecting constantly that everything's going to be increased. And the reality is, like, remember a couple years ago, and everyone was talking about supply chain problems and why everything, when was the last time besides just now that you heard the phrase supply chain, right? You don't, because there are no issues anymore. But you know what didn't come down? The prices corporations were charging for those things. That has nothing to do with supply chain issues. It didn't then, it doesn't now. Just like it doesn't have anything to do with the increased cost in labor. Labor by itself is some of the most expensive parts of any corporation. But it's usually about the benefits, the insurance, and the taxes and all that other stuff. The extra $1.50 that they're paying these workers is not make or break any like individual Starbucks. You mean to tell me that the 3 people that are working behind the counter per hour are making an extra, say, $4.50 now, and that is enough per hour, and that is enough to charge the same amount for my egg bites, but take one of those eggs out, reducing my shit by 1/3? You mean to tell me that math adds up? It doesn't. It doesn't at all. It's corporate greed, and like I've been saying since the beginning, that's all that's going on here. All the corporations want to make more money. All the venture capitalists that sit above those corporations want to make their money, and they want to make more money too. The simple fact that most of the Starbucks in my area are mere miles away from like private jets and private jetways at Republic Airport tells you everything that you need to know about corporate America. So what we need to do is we need to stop blaming the fact that people got these wages. Although, I will tell you, the next time there's going to be a minimum wage conversation, I'm going to have to probably be against it, because it's not about the workers getting more money, which I totally believe in. I don't want to hand these fucks another excuse to start charging me more money for absolutely less stuff. Because it's not the workers, it's the corporations. And I can tell that because Starbucks, I'm a stockholder, is still flipping a profit. So they raised their wages, right? And they raised corporate profits, and now I'm getting, a dividend off of that. Now, granted, it's not like I'm trying to make a point by alienating Starbucks. All corporations are doing it. I just happen to be talking about Starbucks because they're messing with my beloved Egg Bites, and that is no bueno. I'm running out of time, so we're going to do a real quick housekeeping right here. The top 20, brand new one is out. The episode is called Advanced Moron Confidence, not to be confused with the episode from a few weeks ago about moron confidence. And I talk about divestment, and I talk about how absolutely annoyed I am at the Columbia students, and how, while I am very supportive of anybody and everybody that wants to protest and gather and protest in this great country of ours that allows such things. And if you're one of those people that is really anti the protesters for protesting, just remember, you're wrong. You're in the wrong place of this argument. They are allowed to protest, they are allowed to gather, and they are allowed to air their grievances. What they're not allowed to do is break into like Hamilton Hall and take it over and do damage. Also, what they're allowed to do is be stupid about the way they protest, which is exactly what I was saying last week, that they are being completely stupid in the way that they're going about these protests. They're allowed to do it, but what I am fed up with them is them expecting it to do something and then being mad that it's not. Like, if I just keep banging a nail into a piece of wood over here, the piece of wood that I need it in over there is never going to get nailed. No phrasing. So I don't know what they're expecting by doing the wrong thing. These are the same idiots that are like gluing their hands to the street and throwing macaroni and cheese on Van Goghs. Like, this doesn't do anything to solve the problem. But I'm going to stop talking because I covered it really well. I think on the top 20. If you want to give that a look over at Strangerhood TV, that'd be great. Also, while you're over there, discussions of drinks from yesterday, looks like it was Patreon tasting Japanese snacks, and if they do the 9 million Scoville unit gummy, I think I remember that one, so I might check that out if I get an opportunity to walk later, which honestly I'm so backed up at work I probably won't be able to do that. So I have talked just about enough, and the main reason I need to start cutting these short is because editing these goddamn shows is getting to be way too much work, and I'm about doing less work, because if there needs to be shrinkflation, goddammit, it should be on this show, and I think we can all agree on that. Let's get started with some local music on the box, shall we? Today's artist is going to be, Danny Casey. Song's The Best of Us, and I'll see you on the other side, Ray.